The issue is employers don't follow the
Employers
law.
don't follow the rules. That's the thing. Like, so it's a hard question because the truth is a lot of employers don't follow the law. If they're following the law, you have nothing to worry about.
Right. Right.
That's the issue.
Yeah. Let's have a conversation. All right. So welcome to the Good Psychiatry podcast.
Thank you.
I have a special recording today. Obviously, different camera setup. We have a live guest in person, Dr. Barbara Burton. So Barbara and I, we know each other because we went to the same psychiatry residency. Not only did we go to the same psychiatry residency, we were in the same year, which also means that we saw a lot of each other.
We did. A lot.
And at odd hours, weekends, and perhaps in varying states.
A lot of delirious hours, Andy. Yeah.
Of distress. And maybe we didn't show our best selves at times, but that's okay, because may the public never see us in that state. Because here we are, we're done with residency, we learned a lot, and we're gonna teach you guys a little bit about patient privacy, confidentiality, and patient privilege.
Mm-hmm. And we're gonna do it professionally.
We're gonna do it professionally, yes. And to talk well about Barbara, the other thing about Barbara is that she is additionally forensically trained. And for anyone that doesn't know that, it's an additional fellowship that psychiatrists do to learn everything and anything about psychiatry and the law. And Barbara mentioned professionalism. And I will say, because you're here, Barbara, I gotta say good things about you.
Okay, I won't stop you.
Since I knew you, I think, Barbara, you've always been very professional. You've always been very serious about learning the craft of psychiatry and also being a true professional. And I'm not surprised that this is what got you into studying forensic psychiatry in terms of really knowing the details of what it takes to be a good psychiatrist, an ethical psychiatrist, and someone who's able to really follow the laws about patient privacy and confidentiality.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And especially when the work gets stressful and complicated, and when you find yourself getting pulled in a lot of directions emotionally, maybe by patients or family, it can get tricky.
Yes.
It can get tricky.
Yes. Yeah. One of the things that I want to start off with to try to get people interested is the idea of doctor reviews. And I think these days, a lot of people are going online trying to find good doctors. And some of these doctors, not all of them, but some of them have review websites. And I think if you go through a lot of these reviews, some of these doctors have some pretty bad reviews.
Oh, yeah. You see a lot of interesting stories.
Interesting stories.
Yeah.
And I guess to try to tell the general public about this, sometimes these reviews aren't exactly what the true situation is. And part of the reason is that you'll see these reviews, and in most businesses, the business owners have a chance to be able to respond to these reviews. Mm-hmm. And in the case of physicians, because of our need to be able to uphold patient privacy and confidentiality, we can't really respond.
Absolutely true.
Are there situations, Barbara, where doctors can respond in that situation?
To public reviews?
Yes.
Oh, no, because it's a violation of confidentiality to confirm or deny that you were treating a patient.
Yeah.
Now, granted, in the context of those reviews, the patient may be making an admission publicly that they are your patient,
right.
But still the ethics of the profession dictate that you refrain from engaging the patient in a public discourse about their treatment.
Yeah.
Because of that, it can be tricky because as a patient as well or a family member, it's really difficult to figure out what you're getting. It's really hard to get a sense of, what is real, what's not. How do I find a trustworthy doctor? Mm-hmm. At least just based on online reviews, it can be a little bit more complicated with physician practices than with other businesses.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about confidentiality, this is all a framework. And I think in the discussion of what a good doctor is and what a good psychiatrist is, Barbara, you're right. we shouldn't respond to these patient reviews online. And, well, I'll ask you, are there doctors that do respond to these reviews online?
Yes, there are. And I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. And can you say more about that? Like, why is it that, if a doctor has a bad review, why can't they defend themselves? Like, they don't have to say specific medical information.
Well, I mean, there is no way of really conveying your version of events that a patient is describing without introducing new information into the discourse. And I mean, really, like, as a physician, I mean, it is our duty to protect patient information from third parties.
Yeah.
And even if the patient themselves is, whether on the internet or on a street corner, talking about you or about their experience with you, professionally, you have a different obligation than the patient does for protecting that information. The patient can do whatever they want with their information. It's theirs. Mm-hmm. It belongs to them.
Right.
We can't.
Yeah.
We can't.
And, when I think about bad reviews and the doctors that do end up responding, usually it's a little bit of a situation where I think you, as the layperson or the general audience, you see a doctor that's responding to a review. It may be a sign to maybe be a little skeptical of this particular practice because they're not necessarily upholding the professional values of a physician.
I would say so. I mean, I would say that it's a data point, it might draw skepticism. I mean, I might wonder in, everyday situations, not on the internet,
right.
How does this person conduct themselves then?
Uh-huh.
If they, honestly, too, if this is someone, who is responding to commentary on the internet, I wonder how thoughtful they really are about the way that they handle patient information and the way that they handle conflicts with patients, because we all have conflicts with patients.
Yeah.
And there's really an appropriate way and an inappropriate way to go about handling it.
Yeah. Barbara, can you explain more about what the difference is between confidentiality, privilege, patient privacy? They all sound like really important things that we should all do, but what actually is the difference between patient confidentiality and patient privilege?
So confidentiality is the general obligation that all doctors, including psychiatrists, have to protect patient information and hold it in confidence and to not share that information with third parties. So that is confidentiality, and it's an ethical obligation that physicians have toward patients. Privilege refers to the protection of patient-doctor communications in the court of law.
Okay.
So privilege is a legal term, and it refers to the special status that patient-doctor information has in court, whereby a physician cannot be compelled to provide testimony with patient-doctor information in it, except for very specific circumstances. Confidentiality is the general obligation I have to you as the patient to keep your information private. Privilege is the right that a patient has for their medical information to be kept private in the court of law.
Yeah. And I once saw a diagram about how confidentiality is sort of like a big circle, and privilege is sort of like a little circle inside of that.
Yes.
Thomas Gutile. I believe that was Thomas Gutile.
Most likely, yeah.
So I guess in terms of thinking about privilege, if it's related to the court and testimony, if I think about situations that people could get involved where people want a psychiatrist to be involved in the court of law, what sort of situations are these that commonly occur?
So these would be situations where the individual's medical information is directly pertinent to the legal matter at hand.
Okay.
So this would involve, for example, personal injury lawsuits.
Okay.
So if you're a patient and you are suing someone claiming that they caused you psychological harm or injury, and you need a psychiatrist to be involved with that somehow, the person who is treating you for that alleged injury can be called to testify about the
Sure.
information you exchange in
Okay.
the course of your patient-doctor relationship. Another common situation would be in cases of involuntary hospitalization and
Okay.
commitment, which are court proceedings. And in those cases, exchanges between
Yeah.
the patient and doctors are not private. However, you are required to inform the patient in those
Yeah.
situations that the communication may be revealed in court.
Okay.
So essentially, situations where this information, might come out in court and privilege might not apply
Yeah.
have to do with situations where, your medical information is actually like the substance of the
Sure.
legal case.
Whenever I think about psychiatry records being revealed to influence some sort of court of law, I think about messy divorces. And I think about situations where maybe I'm seeing a patient and, for their psychiatric and for their medical issues. And, maybe in the session, the patient talks about the divorce and how much it's stressing them out and maybe it's causing them anxiety. And I could see a situation where maybe the other party that is in the divorce proceedings with my particular patient may want to use my records as a way to prove or to maybe, say that my patient is, gonna not like is a not good spouse or
Fitness. Yeah.
like what is this term?
Are you thinking about like custody disputes and things
Yeah, like a
that?
custody dispute, or also like this person clearly is mentally unstable, and the other spouse has had to support him emotionally during this entire time, so therefore deserves more money. I'm just coming up
Or
things.
allegations,
Yeah, allegations, things like
abusive
that.
behavior, things like that.
So what happens, right? Like how does a psychiatrist deal with a situation like that, where maybe lawyers, maybe the other party is trying to actually obtain records?
So in those situations, you are still obligated to maintain the confidentiality of your patient and any information the patient tells you in the course of treatment. There may be scenarios where lawyers do contact doctors looking for information. Yeah. You are obligated to keep the information private.
Sure.
And the only means by which you could possibly share information with the court is if a judge orders you to.
Okay.
So a communication from a lawyer is not a judge's order. A
Sure.
subpoena from a lawyer
Sure.
for you to give them information is not sufficient. And in those situations, what I always advise other physicians to do, if you are contacted by a lawyer who's looking for your patient's information, it's important for you to actually contact the legal counsel at your malpractice firm.
Okay.
And actually seek their advice about what to do.
Yeah.
But above all, you cannot share patient information with anybody without your patient's consent unless a judge directly orders you to.
Now, if I put myself in, my patient's shoes, a divorce can be very stressful, and a divorce can prompt somebody to seek mental health support.
Yeah.
And I wonder, and I can guess that there's a lot of people in those situations that maybe are deterred from seeing a mental health clinician or a psychiatrist in that situation.
Oh, yes.
Because they're concerned about their medical records actually being revealed, or that it's going to cause an unfavorable decision in the court of the law. You mentioned that the only situation that the medical records can be obtained is through a judge ordering it. Mm-hmm. But for the person that's in this situation, how likely is this to happen? And I know it probably depends.
But definitely. And it can get very complicated. It can get very murky. However, I mean, one variable, to consider is, whether or not the subject of anyone's mental health has been brought about in the litigation at all.
Sure.
I'm not an attorney, but in general, in order for these types of privileged, data to even be considered, for fair game in court, the actual subject of mental health has to be raised by either the plaintiff or the defendant.
Yeah.
So that has to come up. And in that situation, I would tell anybody to speak to their lawyer about what the possibility is of it coming out. But I agree with you, it can, in these types of situations, which are very psychologically tumultuous,
Right.
It can really deter people from seeking treatment, which is unfortunate.
Right.
And so I think it's important for patients to understand, that there are very actually narrow, limited circumstances in which your information can ever be shared.
Sure.
And I also think it's important for patients to know that, if you are concerned about these things, it's good to directly ask your physician about it.
Right.
And when you're looking for a doctor, when you're looking for a psychiatrist, a psychologist, you ask them, how they handle patient confidentiality. Ask them how they would handle it if a lawyer contacted them.
Yeah.
And it can give you an idea of, whether or not it's someone you can really feel safe working with.
Yeah. In terms of other situations where someone may be deterred from seeking help because they're worried about what's being shared in the medical records or the psychiatric records, I also think about issues in the workplace, right? So if there's an executive who is really stressed, they have a really stressful job, and they want to try to find a therapist, or they want to try to get psychiatric help for the stress that they're experiencing. I can see a situation where they may not want to do that because they're concerned that their employer may be able to find that sort of information out. But the likelihood of an employer finding out about an employee seeing a mental health specialist, how could that even happen?
How could that happen? Well, so really, the likelihood of that occurring is extremely small. How could that even happen? I would say it could happen if you decide to sue your employer for psychological harm. It could happen.
Sure.
Because then you would be introducing your mental health as, a substance to a legal case. Absent that, I'm having a hard time coming up with a hypothetical situation where your employer would be able to ethically, legally access that information. Now, that being said, there are certainly situations where people don't do the right thing. Yeah. But
if I get lost in the sauce with you, Barbara.
Yeah.
Right. So, employee stressed, sees a psychiatrist, and uses insurance, health insurance that the company pays for. Does the company have any way to access the health information that shows up, from the health insurance, from billing, from diagnosis codes, things like that?
Not if they're following federal law. Federal regulations around health information and patient information require insurance companies and physicians to all collectively keep that information private. Sure. Insurance companies fall under the doctrine of federal law that governs that, which most people have heard of HIPAA. Right. It requires that when insurance companies and physicians communicate about your care, that information is kept siloed and private. Your employer should not have access to it. Alternatively, if you are seeing a physician for any reason who's maybe outside of your insurance network or unaffiliated with your company, there is no way for that person to share your information with anybody unless you give them consent. Now, I have definitely seen many patients in my own practice who are worried about this because I work with many people in high responsibility professional roles, people who handle a lot of sensitive information in their professions, physicians and attorneys. and people involved in high-stakes business roles. People not only who handle sensitive information, but people, who are, very anxious about any doubt being cast upon their competence or their mental health.
Sure.
And it's unfortunate because a lot of those individuals in those professions are hesitant to seek treatment because they're worried about, essentially, being reported for having a problem. In the structure of federal regulations as they are, and within the structure of our ethics and our professional duty, that cannot happen.
You got me going here, Barbara. You really did. Another situation that I personally experienced, and I'm sure you have too, in terms of managing confidentiality and the sharing of medical information and the workplace, and concern about retaliation, is employers going on disability leave for mental health related reasons. And, having to navigate this situation from the patient side can be very challenging, and can be very difficult to try to figure out what can be shared, what cannot be shared. Can you say more about that? How does one think about the confidentiality in an employer making or an employee making a disability claim for mental health reasons?
So it depends on the structure of the organization in which you work, but in most major organizations, the way that disability leave requests are conducted, the process is actually siloed through a third party. Your employer is not privy to that information. Your employer will know that you are on leave, and if the proper protocol is being followed, they will not know why, and you aren't obligated to tell them why. Or to provide any information about what is happening with you medically. But that being said, I've spoken with many patients who have gone through that process within their company or organization and have had real serious concerns about privacy. Have had very serious concerns about whether the clinicians they're seeing and the physicians they're seeing are trustworthy and can hold their information in confidence. Also, this is a hard question because honestly, a lot of
the issue is employers don't follow the law.
Employers don't follow the rules. That's the thing. So it's a hard question because the truth is a lot of employers don't follow the law. If they're following the law, you have nothing to worry about. That's the issue.
The truth is you have the law, which is that employers aren't privy to this information. And there's always a possibility that they may not follow the law. And that's not something that you or I can predict or decide, on the company, and that's also not something the employee can also predict either. So it's really actually it's a really tough situation to be in, and to try to one, as a psychiatrist, to try to advise the patient in this situation. Should I take a leave? Should I not? Is this going to have negative consequences on my employment? Because sometimes it can.
I mean, it can. The answer often is no if other parties involved are doing the right thing. And I can't always control if people are doing the right thing, unfortunately.
So, Barbara, can you tell me more about situations where doctors are allowed to share information?
Yes. So there are situations that can come up clinically that can actually mandate that we share information. Usually those situations involve either emergencies, so a situation where there is a medical, a safety emergency, and protecting the safety of a patient or another person requires you to divulge information. So, that could be a common example of that is, if you're meeting with a patient and the patient tells you that they're planning to commit suicide, in that situation, you are obligated to refer the patient to the emergency room. You are obligated to inform emergency services that they have told you this, so that steps can be taken to ensure their safety. Other situations in which physicians, psychologists, other health clinicians are required to share information involve what we call mandatory reporting situations. Any time that we have reason to believe that a child may be in danger or being abused or neglected, anytime we have reason to believe an elderly or disabled person is being abused or neglected, in those situations we're required to report the information that we hear. Above all of this, though, in the course of doing this, we are permitted to share only the information that is necessary for safety to be ensured, for someone to get emergency help. You can't just share everything. If
we zoom out on this topic about patient confidentiality and why it's so important for psychiatrists and mental health specialists, the reason is because we want to be able to hold a really safe space for the person who comes into our office to be able to share whatever it is that's on their mind, because it can be very helpful to figure out what's going on with the patient and to be able to help them from a therapy standpoint. They need to be able to trust us that we're going to hold this information safe and secure. Now, on the other hand, as you mentioned, Barbara, these clinical emergencies, the patient situations where patient safety is a significant concern, that often puts a conflict between the alliance or the relationship that you have with the patient and the need to be able to help the patient in terms of patient safety and to divulge necessary information. And I don't know, Barbara, it's a pretty tough line and a pretty tough situation to try to hold both of them, because sometimes it can be in direct opposition. Ideally, it's not going to be in direct opposition, but in terms of the work of a psychiatrist, in terms of managing issues related to suicide, issues related to people who can't take care of themselves because they have a bipolar disorder episode exacerbation, these are situations where we have to actually break the alliance. And it can be really challenging to really try to repair that afterwards.
It can be. No, it certainly can be. And what can be challenging, too, is sometimes the effect that this also has on a patient's personal relationships with other people in their life. I mean, sometimes when these emergencies arise, when someone needs, to be hospitalized, oftentimes family is involved. And sometimes the alliance between the physician and the patient isn't the only thing that can become precarious. Sometimes the alliance between the patient and their family can become precarious too.
Yeah.
As psychiatrists, our goal is always to, one, act in the best interests of our patients, but, two, to also respect their autonomy, respect their privacy. When we have to make decisions or do things, that we feel sacrifices one of those things, in the names of safety, it can be a really difficult juncture to navigate.
Barbara, where can we find your practice?
I'm located in Brookline, Massachusetts. I'm just outside of Boston, and I'm also licensed in New York and Texas. And I see patients in person at my office and virtually. And I see a lot of patients in high-stress professional roles. That's really a niche I've developed in my practice. And I do a lot of work involving burnout, depression, anxiety, the sorts of things that high-performance professionals really run into.
Yeah, that sounds great. And definitely, I think, Barbara, your expertise on confidentiality and privilege, I can see how it could be very relevant in patient cases that you see.
Oh, it is. And many of the patients who come to me for treatment often have special concerns about privacy, about confidentiality, just given the sensitivity of the work that they do.
Yeah. All right. Well, Barbara, it's been great having you on.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
All right.